enter into here together as we inquire about these healing and health and wellness practices and what the realm of entheogenic experience avails to us. I really like this image up here. I feel like it kind of captures the essence of the plant spirits and their nurturing, gentle, helpful energy, and they're supportive. They're not always gentle, but often they are. Our first speaker tonight is Dr. Gary Pace, who I've had the wonderful opportunity of knowing for about maybe a year and a half now or so. Dr. Gary was actually a graduate of CIIS. He graduated from the ICP program here back in 1985 and then went on to become a family physician. And he practices up in Sonoma County and primarily in the realm of community health centers. And so he's been a student of various Indigenous wisdom traditions for many years and is very interested in learning how these cultures can help us to navigate the challenging times that we're in. So let's give Dr. Gary a warm welcome.
Thank you, Natalie. I feel a little bit like the opening act for the Beatles or something with Cat Harrison in here, but I'll try not to get too freaked out about going too fast here. So first I want to say a little prayer. So I want to say thank you for Natalie and for ERIE for hosting this event and bringing us all together. I want to give some gratitude for the teachers I've had, both plant and human, over the years, and the healing that has occurred to bring me to where I am now. And I ask that we all are able to get something useful tonight to take out and make a change in the world. Thank you. So what I'm going to talk about tonight is the role of psychedelics in these apocalyptic times. Really what I'm interested in is the social change aspect here. So we'll be talking a lot about Joanna Macy and the framework she brings into this kind of work. And really a lot of what I'm trying to do is to merge these two paradigms together and to look at psychedelic and to look at these medicines as potential catalysts for the kind of changes we're needing to have right now. We're being called, I feel like right now we are all being called by the earth, by nature, by spirit to help make this great turning occur. And how we do that and what kind of tools we use, I think, are really critical right now. And I think the psychedelic entheogenic world has a lot to offer us in this, and so that's really what the focus tonight is going to be. Plant spirits are what have been most profound teachers for me and the most profound healers for me. And I think I really encourage us to deepen our relationship with the plants and with the spirits of the plants to help with this work that's ahead of us. But the other component of this is the ceremonial structure. Entheogens and psychedelics can be really exciting, can be really fun, and there's a lot of interesting things that go on with it. But the container that's been developed through the millennia with some of these indigenous cultures, I think really is a profound help in channeling the potential of the plant teachers and to really make the most out of what we can do with this. It's also, the ceremonial containers are a way to make it a lot safer for people too and make it more predictable. My personal experiences have been somewhat with synthetics, but it's mainly with the plant medicines, and that's what's most interesting to me. My most kind of long-lasting experience has been with some Mazatec healers down in Huautla de Jimenez in Oaxaca. And I know Francoise came and gave a talk a couple months ago here on the Mazatec culture, so I think you can connect to it on the ERIE website. And Francoise is a great teacher and a really good conduit for that sort of information. But in the center here is Julieta Casimira. She's one of the 13 Indigenous grandmothers, and she's somebody who's been a really inspirational part of my life in teaching me about prayer and about ceremony, and and she's accessible too. You can go visit her and work with her down in Mexico. That's Maria Sabina on the right, who's sort of the most famous curandera out of that tradition. But and recently I went down to Peru and was working with ayahuasca and some of the Shipibo healers down there. And I'm going to talk some more about that later, but just to kind of acknowledge that. So these plant beings have, some people credit them with some of the major evolutionary steps for human beings over time. Some people say that language seemed to have potentially got stimulated by these entheogens, and others suggest that the presence of religion in human culture was sort of catalyzed by some of the psychedelics. And I think we're at another point right now in human evolution that's needing to happen, and I want to suggest that the psychedelics and the plants are showing up in such profound numbers right now to help us make this next step. So this is my little quick analysis of the state of the world. Basically, I think the important thing here is you can do whatever you want to with this, but the point is we're at the point where we're trying to make this turning from the old industrial paradigm that's consumptive and destructive to a sustainable life force society. And how to do that, what our role in all that is remains to be seen. So my analysis is urgent action is needed, and how can psychedelics help with this? I think the first step to look at is it seems pretty obvious probably to most people in this room of the current state of affairs, but why are we acting? Why aren't we stepping up to the plate at the level of intensity that's really demanded of us right now? And the way I'm looking at this is I sort of broke it down into different groups, because I think different groups have different reasons why they're not acting, and I think psychedelics have a little different role to play with each group. So the first one is say the 1%, those that are in power that are benefiting, and I think they're going to be hard to shake loose, because they're sort of like addicts that are have a good supply of what they want. It's going to be hard to shake them loose. Although psychedelics I have seen it with some people in this kind of strata of society get really changed, but personally I don't have much access to those people, and I don't know how to really catalyze that change that much. But the second group is a lot of mainstream culture, and a lot of these folks, I think, will, over time, as the situation deteriorates, will start getting on board. But I'm not sure where the role of psychedelics are here, because again, a lot of these folks may use it as a party situation, but in an intentional fashion for social change. I'm not sure how much that'll happen, but I think these people will move over into the camp of kind of understanding as as global warming gets worse, as the oceans are rising, all that will happen. The third group of people is the ones that are actively engaged, that are already doing all they can, and the role of psychedelics in that community would be to help sustain people, to help kind of tap into the spirit, and also to get maybe some minor course corrections. So, but the group I'm most interested in is this bottom group. This is the group that's probably a lot of you might identify with being that is aware of the problem but not sure how to engage at the level you want to do. Or you try some things periodically, but you get frustrated and you back off. Or recycle, maybe buy a Prius, do some of the right stuff, but you kind of realize that's not really what the depth of what's being called for. And I think the entheogenic world has a lot to offer us in this community. And one of the ways that I've been looking at it is, if you look at Joanna Macy's work around the despair that we feel by being alive at this time in history. We're watching species disappear. We're watching, we know that being a human being on the planet right now, in the United States of America, we're creating incredible amounts of waste and sucking up all this energy that's really problematic. And if you really let that in, it's pretty overwhelming. So most of us keep it at arm's length all the time and don't feel it. And that's partly what leads to the paralysis. So part of where the psychedelics can help, especially in a container, is you can let those feelings in, work through them, and come out the other side, and then you can get the guidance. So that's a little bit what we'll talk about later. So we looked at kind of why we aren't acting and kind of broke it down a little bit. So the next step, I think, is what would action look like? What kind of steps should we be taking? And this is where Joanna's work about the Great Turning comes in. And probably a lot of people are familiar with this, I would think, in this room. But she has quite a bit of writing out about this. And she really talks about the Great Turning, moving from this old society structure to the new society structure. And there are 3 different ways that you can approach it. And they're all equally good. It sort of breaks down that tension that happened, in the 60s of the doers and the revolutionaries and the beers and the, the love. And it's all important in terms of making the shift. So we'll go through each one a bit here. The first one is the holding action. So this is basically resistance work or protection of land and species and cultural tradition. There's some examples on the left side, but the part that I'm most interested in is how ceremony can help inspire people to move in that direction. And so you look at the breaking through the denial and despair, like I mentioned before, dropping into this understanding of deep time. And this is where, we tend to be very short-sighted in looking at impacts of things. And we start thinking about the 7th generation or, ancestors and the generations yet to come. The ceremony and the entheogenic work can help us really get into that. So these are just some examples of the way psychedelics could help us move into that holding action resistance thing. And I think really, a lot of people I know have had experiences where they get inspired to go out and do environmental or ecological work. And that can happen spontaneously, it can happen with the use of entheogens. But what I'm really wanting to encourage and wanting to try to develop is ways that we can create ceremonial structures to help foster that, to help make it happen on a more frequent basis, and to help people that are sort of flailing a little bit to really drop in and make the next step in a deep way. So the second part is the shift in consciousness. So this is, again, 3 aspects that Joanna talks about that are all important in moving to the next level for our society. They're all parts of action that are needed. And the shift in consciousness is kind of typically what we think about in using psychedelics or entheogens, and examples on the left side. But this is where we talk about the interconnectedness, the mystical experiences that people here are probably familiar with, I would suspect. And but one of the things I wanted to just point out was this idea of neuroplasticity. I've heard some research lately about the increase in neuroplasticity that happens around the use of mushrooms and ayahuasca. And they last, what I've heard is they think it lasts for maybe a week or 2 after the ceremony, that there's a time when you are more able to lay down new synaptic connections, have new behavior, have kind of install new behaviors, new thought patterns in that window. And that's a really good time to start, if you're going to do a yoga practice, to really start doing the yoga practice, because it's more likely to become a habit if you do it during that window of time. So, but this is all parts of how these medicines can help with the shift in consciousness. And the last is so this is the third aspect of the Great Turning, life-sustaining systems and practices. So this is sort of the problem solving, the nuts and bolts, permaculture, different things. But again, the role of ceremony here is interesting, because there's been a lot of writing about different people who have solved big problems with the use of LSD or other psychedelics. Watson and Crick supposedly was using LSD when he uncovered the double helix. Supposedly Steve Jobs had been working with some of that when he came up with some of the internet work. So, it's tapping into a different part of the mind. It's allowing us to come up with new ways of thinking, more systems-based solutions. And this is really what we're needing as we move into these process. I think the other part that I just wanted to point out here is this: if you look at the mushrooms themselves, they sort of emulate what we want to do as a community. You know, the fruiting bodies are what's above the ground. Below the ground is these extensive mycelial networks that Paul Stamets calls the nervous system of nature. You know, they can adapt, they can communicate, they move back and forth between the roots and things. And if we ingest that, then we're partly just taking that in ourselves. And, so, why aren't we acting? What types of actions are needed? Now, the third thing I want to just kind of go over is: are there any models out there where this is going on, where people are really actively trying to develop this? This is a workshop series that some people I know were doing in the Bay Area recently. It was a 5-part series where they were trying to combine Joanna's work with ceremony. And the idea was to use the medicine in the middle part. So there was 2 workshops leading up to it. Then there was a weekend ceremony, and then 2 workshops afterwards that were for the integration. And the idea was in the ceremony piece, the context is that you go into the deep grief work, this deep despair work, and then you come out the other side. And then the following days you're able to really tap into other possibilities and really kind of hear the voice of nature and what it's calling you to do, which has been sort of drowned out because of all the static, because you're holding off these emotions. And the results were, I mean, basically what people are reporting is that they got a lot of personal healing, and then as the personal healing is occurring, it opens space up for them to really start dropping into this deeper place and getting more clarity about their direction in life. Not being driven so much by the neurotic patterns, but more clearing that stuff out of the way and then being able to connect in. The other thing I want to talk about, this is what I was kind of alluding to earlier about the Shipibo people, is I went down to Peru recently and worked for a couple of weeks at this place called the Temple of the Way of Light. And have people been there? Do people? Great. So it's a ayahuasca healing center that down in the Peruvian Amazon, mainly with women Shipibo healers. So it is, rather than having a male kind of a grand maestro at the top, it's more of a collective of women healers. It's very interesting. They've got a great website too. So they have these 3 pieces. So there's the healing center down on the lower left, which correlates with Joanna's piece of a change of consciousness. So it's a 12-day session, 7 ayahuasca sessions in a 9-day period. It's so it's a deep healing that's going on there. Then there's the permaculture up on the upper right, which correlates with the life-sustaining new models of ways of living. And then they also have this nonprofit that's working on some political activity down on the right. So first, the healing center is, again, like I said, 7 days of ceremony, ayahuasca ceremony. It's sort of held by a Western, psychologically minded person is sort of holding the space, but there's Shipibo healers working with people in the ceremonial space. So they're the healers, really. And it's pretty traditional. They work with other parts of the Amazonian medicine, from floral baths to herbs and things like that. And it was profound. It was the depth of the work that was going there, and the safety of the way they were holding the space was really quite something. And the model they're using is that you're clearing through your personal work, you're clearing the blockages and the distractions, and then you're opening up the channel to connect in with spirit and to do this help other people or do the work you're here to do. The second piece of it, it's a permaculture site, so it's 300 acres down in the Amazonian rainforest, and they're bringing in, it's a very vibrant place right now. They're planting fruit trees, they're doing aquaculture, all the toilets are composting toilets, which is kind of incredible because there you are purging with this ayahuasca, and a deep purging, and it's just going back to feeding the soil in the garden to grow the medicinal plants that is going to help the next people that come down. And so they're actively working with this. The idea is in 2018 they're hoping to have all the food and medicinal plants be grown on site. And then the last part was the nonprofit. So there's this was the part that really kind of surprised me, I guess, in that the depth of what they're doing there. They're going out into the rainforest, working with some of the indigenous folks out there around culturally appropriate and linguistically appropriate education, and also working a lot with protecting land rights. There's because of everything that's been going on down in the Amazon. I went there about 12 years ago, and then going down again now. It was dramatic to see the change in all, the trees were now 10 years old as opposed to 80 years old or 100 years old like they were before. They've all been cut. Anything close to the rivers have been cut. And apparently what the way they were telling the story was, in Peru, if you own the surface land, you don't own the mineral rights. And 80% of the land is, 80% of the mineral rights to the land is owned by multinationals outside of Peru. And they can just come in at any time and go in and start exploring on the land. And what they do is they drill an 8-foot hole, and they drop dynamite in it and blow it up, and then they look at the seismic patterns down there. So actually on this land a couple of years ago, all of a sudden one day, in comes the Canadian petroleros, and they started drilling holes, and they go out and started challenging them, and they said, I'm going to get my lawyers. And they said, go for it. We're in our rights. And it was kind of an amazing thing for the owners of the land, who were British and American, to realize that they didn't have any rights at all. So what they did is they went into ceremony with some of the healers and worked on this and trying to put the protective energetic protective field around. And it turned out they didn't find any petroleum there. So who knows what caused that? But it just sort of shows that this is the sort of model they're using there on how to work with this stuff and how to combine politics and the ceremonial work. Another story that they told was they're out in the rainforest. A lot of these cultures, the indigenous peoples' cultures, have been really decimated because there's a long war down there in Peru, and because of the extractive industries that have gone in there and really torn things up. So they've connected with some of the indigenous leaders that are working with some of the resistance work, and invited them into the Temple of the Way of Light to do ceremony to receive ceremony from the healers that are there. And a lot of them had never really done it before. They'd done it, sort of haphazardly. And they're finding these really profound experiences that these folks are having, bringing in the ancestors talking very clearly about what they want them to be doing. And so then it's sustaining them to go back out and do the work now. So in a way, the interest of the outsiders done with integrity allows a container for the indigenous people to tap back into what's really driving them. So the last thing I just wanted to say about this place is that part of what happens is the healing work that's being done is actually how they're financing a lot of this other stuff. So to go down there for your own personal healing, it actually is part of how you sustain the other work there. And the part that was the most exciting for me was ayahuasca was at the center. This was medicine. It was almost like the rainforest was using the ayahuasca as its voice, to come through the Shipibo healers, to come through the pasajeros that are going down there to do the work, and to come out and do the work. And so it's a very profound way that the jungle's kind of working through us, if we let it. So basically, I just wanted to say that, I feel like we're being called, we're being encouraged to move forward, and that as much as we can do to help support that and to channel that and bring that out is, that's where my interest is right now. And I think these plants, especially in this ceremonial context, are really profound ways to do that. this is some Mandela quotes. Sometimes it falls on a generation to be great. You can be that great generation. Let your greatness blossom. So, this is a work in progress. If people have experiences or, references or ideas, please just contact me and let me know. And, so Natalie says we can do questions now for a few minutes, so if anybody has anything or comments. This can be a discussion too,
I'm very interested in the information you gave about the neuroplasticity being enhanced. Where did you?
Yeah, I figured somebody was going to want to reference that. I don't have that, I think I'm not sure. It was at a conference I was at not that long ago, and I heard people talking about it, but I don't have the reference for it. I'm sorry. Does anybody know?
I've read recently that psilocybin has been used. I've read recently. Well, is this thing on? Yeah. Psilocybin has been used in mice to reprogram some behaviors that have been trained out of them. If they would head towards a certain part of the maze, they'd get a shock, and this would produce the same sort of brain damage that you see with PTSD. And then when they be given psilocybin, they would forget that damage, and they'd reinvestigate and lose that fear. And so it is being shown through the analysis of their brain tissue that they're actually regrowing brain cells. Now, whether or not that happens in humans, I suspect it does. It has not been proven yet by that study.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I have that. If you want to email me up here, I'll go back and because I do have that. I got that one recently too. Thank you. Anybody else have any? Well, one of the things was I was told I was supposed to come talk about things. So, so that's why I'm up here. Personally, I had a profound clearing out of old stuff that, I was in CIIS 30 years ago, so I've been in therapy more than anybody wants to even talk about. And there's some places I have not been able to get to. And I've been doing medicine work for probably a dozen years and pretty consistently. And something really moved down there for me in a really deep way. That so now the next step, I've only been back a month now. So the next step for me is, and this talk basically was written down there for the most part because I was told that's what I was supposed to do. So here I am. Yeah, so it kind of remains to be seen exactly where my path is going, but I suspect I'll be involved with them down there some more, and it's a very active, vibrant scene right now, and there's hundreds of ayahuasca healing centers down in the Peruvian Amazon right now. So there's a lot of places, but there's a lot of them that have questionable ethics, and there's concerns about ayahuasca tourism and sort of exploitation of cultural ways, and I think it's fairly difficult to navigate that path to do it in a way that's good, and so. I'm a doctor. I work up here with conventional medicine and alternative medicines too, and so part of it for me is trying to sort of find this interface with the traditional energetic medicines, because this is really energetic healing, spirit healing. In my world, I see 20 patients a day. I have for a long time, and I don't see people get better that much with Western medicine. And it's led me on this path, herbal medicine, homeopathy, kind of working programmatically with other things. But when I go down here, I see healing occur, which is kind of mind-blowing. And I don't get it, It's like, how come I got to go to the Amazon to get healed? And I'm around here, quote healers all day, but it's, so it's really, so I'm with patients in a very different way right now. I'm sort of developing programs in the clinics I work with in a really different way. But it's, it really kind of threw a monkey wrench in my brain around healing and how to do that. And does that mean I have to bring ayahuasca up here? I mean, is that what healing means? I don't know. It's all sort of a question, but it's really cool to be in a room of allies. Yeah. No, no.
The healing has to do with the belief in the person and just medicine, or do you think that's anything to do with the
Well, I mean, there's probably part of it. To me, intentionality is a big deal, and holding space together with the person that's working with them. But I saw people down there that I don't know why they were there. They were called there. They didn't really know. They'd never done ayahuasca before. Here they were, 7 ceremonies in 9 days. They didn't really know what they were getting into. They didn't really have this whole healing paradigm. And I tell you, by the end of it, they were different. And so, what their belief system was, it was sort of like a little sail in a hurricane.
Hey, thanks for your talk. That was great. I was wondering if the Temple of the Way of Light has inspired the Shipibo women to go off on their own and create their own healing centers. I was always surprised why they didn't have their own. They were always working with other people.
Well, that's interesting. So one of the things one of the healers said when we were down there was, he said, they're doing healing centers out there. They work in their community and they work with people out there. And he said he loved working there because it was so much easier. We don't, there's this whole thing with brujeria and kind of negative dark energies down there. And he's like, I spend all my time when I'm working with my people pulling off curses and pulling out these daggers and all that stuff. And you guys don't have all that stuff, I just get to work with just the energy blocks then. So, I mean, they're doing that. I think part of it is it's really nice for them just to come in to be the sort of the musician, kind of come in and play the gig and then leave, and then everybody else has to deal with all the other part of it too. But that's a great question. Yeah.
The Shipibo in Pucallpa, that's the place to go if you want to have really just traditional indigenous Shipibo shamanism with ayahuasca. So there are healing centers there, and that's a beautiful place also to go. It's way to the west of the Amazon, Pucallpa.
Yeah, the people, the healers that were that actually were working at our place, they live in Pucallpa, and they would bring them in, so they would kind of bring them in for a couple of weeks stints to do the work there. But yeah, right, that's where
I have a quick question. You were mentioning how ayahuasca is kind of like the jungle is speaking through the ayahuasca, and it seems over time each generation has this sort of plant medicine or the medicine it works with. Do you think, being in the time that we're in and we're in this sort of major turning, that ayahuasca's megaphone is just so loud? It seems like that's really sort of pushing its way through all different corners of the world right now in ways that I haven't really seen with other entheogens, and I wonder if you could maybe speak to that a little bit. Or
Well, you probably really want Kat to talk about that. I mean, for me personally, the mushrooms are really profound medicine in this way. They like to grow up here. They're happy growing up here. You can get some mycelium and put it in a bucket, and 2 weeks later, like, often is growing, and it's a lot less finicky than ayahuasca or say peyote or some of the other plants. And there's not any problem with shortage, and I think, especially worked with ceremonially, the mushrooms are profound teachers. But I'm not as experienced with ayahuasca, but it's incredible to watch it make its way around the world right now. And I actually had an experience. I was recently visiting Julieta in Mexico, and there was an Israeli woman that was there. singing a Santo Daime song and some Brazilian that I had heard before from karaoke in this area. You know, it was like, and there were some other people from Brazil that were there. Everybody knew this song in the middle of the highlands of Mexico from ayahuasca medicine. You know, and it's like, how is that happening right now? It's just incredible the way it's all mixing and swirling around and connecting right now. And so, yeah, we're at, you know, it's like we're alive at this amazing time where anything we do can have an impact, and these, you know, we don't really know how the outcome is going to go, and the people in this room collectively moving forward in a good way can really help shift things, and these medicines are showing up, and we have access to this ceremonial wisdom that, you know, as 50 years ago, nobody had access to this information. So, yeah, so I think it's a great question, and Iboga is another one that's kind of in this mix. It's like, wow, how's that? Where does that fit into that? I don't know.
Just to kind of piggyback off of the talk about ayahuasca tourism, something that's becoming alarming to me is just the over-harvesting of this beautiful, precious plant medicine. Did you find that while you were at the temple, did they talk about that at all? Are they harvesting this vine on the land where the work is being done? I know that folks of mine are having to go 2-3 hours to harvest, you know, and in a sustainable way. And so it's costing more money to do that, and so there's this, I'm glad that she's so abundant and the need for working with her, and I think that we need to be cautious about when to work with her and how we're working with her in the way that we're harvesting her. And so that's just a question that's been coming into my experience when I do work with her. So yeah, something I wanted to just kind of bring up, and if you'd like to answer that, I'd like the other speakers too, if they could talk to that as well.
Right, I'm sure there's a lot of people that have a lot of opinions about that. Yeah, that's a great question, and I mean, it's one that, to me, it seems like that's an issue. You know, I asked that down there, and their answer was that the old growth, the real old thick vines have been over-harvested, but they felt like the younger ones were readily available, it grows fast, and that they weren't having any, that they were not expressing concerns. They're also planting it majorly on the land now. They don't get it on the land, they're getting it from near Pucallpa, where through one of the families that's where they're connected with, but it's yeah, I don't know, that's part of the mushroom beauty. Yeah.
The vine does grow pretty fast too, actually.
So I guess we have 5 more minutes if anybody else has a question. Yeah.
Yeah, so in regards to the changes in neuroplasticity, any insight on what type of support or how to get some research going on the capacity of therapies that we use now to integrate with ayahuasca or other plant medicines, as far as increasing the rates of things like psychotherapy, EMDR, neurofeedback, which is what I do. Be pretty easy to put together a study, say changes in brainwave patterns after ayahuasca in this therapy versus no ayahuasca, right? Not that complicated to really demonstrate that there is a change in neuroplasticity. So any ideas how to get something like that going?
Well, it can't be done in this country, so.
Well, no,
Yeah,
but it's, well, unless you could, bring them back really fast.
So, yeah, maybe.
Yeah. But,
Microphone.
Yeah, Tanya's saying that they're doing some of that work in England right now, and so connect with her. But there's a lot of work going on with ayahuasca research now out of this country, and around with the neuroscience kind of stuff. And MAPS is kind of a place, a repository for some of that. But yeah, it's fascinating. All this neuroscience stuff, and actually, it looks like we have some tools that actually help with it, can actually facilitate positive change. And so how do we channel that? How do we learn to do it more skillfully is what you're asking.
Thank you, Carrie. Wow.